This is Andy from Business Without Bullshit. You might remember when the high street was a lovely place that you could go and rummage around different retailers and buy all this stuff. Obviously, that's changed a bit. Bill was the CEO of Iceland and Wickes and has told us some incredible stories. So check it out. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Andy. Nice to be here.
Now, Bill, I hear you're taking life a little bit easier these days. But clearly, what you did do more recently, these Grimsey Reviews have ended up incredibly influential. And you said you funded these independently. You did this on your own.
Yeah, in 2013, we got together, a group of us, to produce the High Street Review that we felt Mary Portas should have done when she was commissioned to do it by David Cameron in 2011. And unfortunately, in those days, Mary's outlook and objective was really about TV shows and things like that. And she missed the opportunity to highlight to government just exactly what the industry was facing, particularly with high streets and town centres, because of technology and the shift away from retailing into home deliveries, et cetera, et cetera. So I fell out with Mary very publicly, which I'm very sorry about, but it happened.
You knew her personally quite well.
Well, not personally well, but
you knew.
I knew who she was, and she knew who I was. And she flew at me on the stage of a conference, and she said, you've made lots of money out of being a retailer. What are you doing about it? So I said to all my friends and colleagues.
Is that the trigger for you?
Yeah. I said, okay, we've got to put up or shut up.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we will produce the review we thought Mary should have produced, and I will fund it. It'll be totally independent. We'll launch it in Westminster, which we did. Which was very costly, I can assure you. And you get all these old lords wander in because it's a champagne evening, and you're doing a presentation. I say, well, what's this one about? Oh, give me a glass. Thank you very much. Oh, God, I'm paying for this,
Yeah.
But it didn't matter. And Brandon Lewis was the minister responsible for high streets, and he sort of barged in and while I was on the lectern. So I jumped down and let him take over, and he said he would have a look at it. So you had no choice. And so we did get it in front of them, and they did acknowledge lots of what was in it, but they didn't actually adopt anything or do anything. So we wound up going round the country, speaking to local authorities principally about their role and what they needed to do in order to regenerate town centres as a commercial hub, not based on retailing, but based on community and a community hub, health, education, entertainment, leisure, experiences, decarring the towns, making them fit for the climate change that was coming in front of us, and things like that. And some of them actually took it on board. And the one that sticks in my mind the most, apart from Stockton-on-Tees in this country, was a town in Belgium called Ruchelaer. Now, I did a presentation in Ostend, and this mayor of Ruchelaer rang me up about a week later, and he said, could you come and do a talk for me in my town? Because we're going to do it. I said, what are you going to do? He said, we're going to do everything in your review.
Wow.
We are going to use it as our template, and we are going to change this town. So I went across and did this presentation. He had TV there, it was in a cinema, had 500 residents came out.
Big town, small town?
Fairly big town, I would say 100,000, something like
decent
that.
size.
So, and since then, he has revolutionised Ruchelaer. It's a wonderful place to be now. And it's all based on that original interface. And I'm still in touch with him. And I've put no end of students that used my old website, which I think you probably came across me by, who doing their dissertations on high streets, and they said, can we use your stuff? I said, you can use it all, I don't mind, as long as you don't put it in as a dissertation. That wouldn't be a good idea, but you can use the information. And he's been great, and it's fantastic. The town in the UK that did it the most was Stockton-on-Tees, and the chief executive of the local authority at the time was a unique individual. And it'll come as no surprise to you is that the one thing that makes a huge difference to any organisation, anything that you're about to do, is the leadership and the management. And if there's a guy
Or a girl. Yeah.
Or a girl. Yeah, sorry.
Careful, Bill.
I wouldn't last 5 minutes at work these days. I really wouldn't.
I think guy is almost a unisex term.
I mean, I don't even know what woke means. But I'm doing my best to fit in these days.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm now the isolated person.
Yeah.
But never mind, perhaps I deserve it. But the fact is that in life, you need leaders, and you need a vision, and you need teamwork, and you need great communicators to bring people together. And once you've got that sort of picture of perfection 10 years out and a roadmap of how to get there with various points along the way to check and balance that you're on track, it works. And you bring with you the private sector as well. So at a time of austerity, which we've had for 14 years, which is partly why everything's broken in this country at the moment, but that's another story. If you bring the private sector with you to jointly invest, you can make huge changes. And they've done that in Stockton-on-Tees, and it's bucked all the trends up in the northeast.
Were both of these towns in a terrible state at the time? Out of interest, were they building from a bad position?
They were building from the same position as most towns were then. Most towns now are in a worse position than back then, simply because back in 2013, when we first came up with the community hub idea for a town centre, Amazon was just
starting.
A baby elephant in the room. Today it's a mammoth. And we've all become Amazoned.
It's an amazing system. Whatever you think about the company, it's
unbelievable.
incredible.
My wife, I quite literally, I think our doorbell must go almost daily, and they just chuck it on the doorstep. And she only ordered it yesterday. So the whole world is changing from a retail perspective. So what we're going to do with what historically town centres were the trading centre for communities. And then out of town shopping came along, which I was a big protagonist. I was the new store development director for Tesco's in the 80s before I went to Hong Kong. And I was opening 25 superstores a year on the edge of towns. And so what was that doing? It was sucking the life out, the commercial life out of the town.
Because of parking, a lot of it, wasn't it, really? Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, so with free parking for an out-of-town superstore versus pay through.
A nightmare.
Yeah,
carrying it.
Absolute nightmare. And then if you throw in to the mix the climate change issues that were still in their infancy in the sort of noughties coming into the early teens of this century. And now everybody's aware of how serious it is. You can combine your vision for a town that will make it green, if I may use that term, decarbonise your town, take cars out of your town, mobilise your community around a vision of the future that will attract investors because it's going to be a micro-economic system of its own that's going to be successful, and you can change things and you can make them much, much better. So if you have an event-based, experience-based town centre that's great fun, you'll find that people go there all the time. Now, when I go around the towns during the what do you call the teens in the 20s? You call them the noughties. Well,
yeah.
Anyway, I went up and down the
teenies.
Yeah, the teenies. And, you say, what do you do with your town centres? Well, we have a farmer's market once a month. Oh, really? That's exciting. That sort of thing. Whereas in Stockton-on-Tees...
Yeah, what's it like?
The chief executive there, he took out some money from his budget and created a team, an event team, 4 people, and their job was to put something on every single week of the year. Not small things, but big things. And the community...
Give me 52 things. Give me the jazz band week. Give me the whatever.
Yeah. Well, what he did was he created an amphitheatre in the middle of town, and it's used for all sorts of events. And every Friday night, there's a marquee put up in that amphitheatre, and a bar is put in there, which the council fund, and they have security, and it's for local musicians only, and the place for the youth to go. And it's packed. Now, there's a bit of kickback from the local sort of nightclubby type offers, but nevertheless, they're in the town every Friday. You know where your teenager's gone.
Even in the winter?
Even in the winter. In fact, I've been there once when it was pouring with rain and it was still packed. So it works. And that chief executive would make himself known in Sainsbury's or Tesco's, wherever he was, and people knew who he was, and they would talk to him about what didn't work and did work. He was a known personality because he'd sold the plan to the community.
It's the charisma you need, isn't it, to drive an idea through that, because you're going to meet so much resistance and you've got to persuade everyone. You've got to have high emotional intelligence, adapt, you know. All
of the above, plus the fact you've got to be a business person.
Yes.
So it has to be commercially viable, and you need special people to do that. Now, the way I used to describe it, I wasn't successful at this, but I said to the High Street Task Force, which the government put in place, which has been a toothless animal in my opinion, but that's another story. This High Street Task Force, the first job I said they should have done is redefine the person spec for a chief executive officer of the local authority. Now think about that for a moment. Not the elected people, the chief executive officer.
Do they have one, all the local
authority? They all have one.
Someone who's actually a business person?
No, they generally have come up through the various departments in local authorities, civil service, if you like. So the kind of pressure that you get when you're running a PLC is totally different to running one of these councils, but they're huge, some of them. In fact,
their budgets are enormous.
Massive. Yeah. So I remember walking around Worksop with the council, and I had the elected leader. So you've got to separate in your mind elected people and the officers. The elected people, in my view, are like non-executive directors. They should be there checking that the strategy that the officers are coming up with is balanced and right for success in the future. What they tend to do is they're elected and they want to do things themselves. Right. That doesn't necessarily work. So if you get a good chief executive officer, he will get it done. So I said to this elected leader of the council, could your chief executive be the chief executive of Tesco? And he looked at me and said, you're having a laugh, aren't you? I said, no. I said, this is huge. A huge job you've got here. This is a unitary
100 million
council.
budget or something. Yeah.
I said, because if he can't, sack him or her. Sorry. Sack him or her straight away, because it isn't going to work. If you want to be successful, you need commercial people, because towns of the future need to be a brand. What does this town now stand for? Why would you go there to live, work and play and visit? What's the attraction? And I looked at him, by the way, there is nothing in Worksop. Let's test it. Let's ask a few people why you live here. So we went, I got up to him, he said, I can't get out. So I'm sorry, this sounds like I'm down on Worksop. No, I think Worksop's a fabulous place.
Honest.
It's got huge history. And one of the things we've got in our country is a great heritage. And so all of our town centres up and down the country have something unique about them in their history. So they've got the actual kernel of a brand. So then they have to define that brand and then put it together and make it work for the future, and then sell it.
Trying to get out. the best answer they could get. There's also stuff that, musicians are really struggling to find places to entertain people. They end up buskers on the street with people getting annoyed. It's like, it's not that complicated, some of it. I mean, the entertainment part is almost the easy part. There's plenty of actors, music, there's comedians, there's people desperate to have an audience. You know what I mean? They'd pay for an audience practically.
Yeah.
I think you're so right about each town has a kernel of history, and you could build from there. How did Stockton-on-Tees? They just were lucky they had a good chief executive officer.
Well, he was a good chief executive officer and still is an advisor to lots of places. But what he did is he defined a vision for the place and sold it to his council and to the community. And that vision said, we are going to become the greatest outdoor amphitheatre in the northeast of England. So we are going to create in our town centre activity which will drive people into the town centre for an experience and fun. And as a consequence, all the businesses that are trading around there will be mobbed with people, and it will start to become a virtuous circle. He had a beat-up old theatre called the Globe, which was a 1930s Art Deco building, beautiful place that in the 70s became a Mecca bingo hall and fell into disrepair. He raised £30 million.
Oh my God.
And restored it to its former glory. It's a 3,000-seater theatre.
Oh my God, it's huge.
It's open now, it's mobbed. He had two shopping centres, both failing. So he bought them both from the private
The council
sector.
bought the shopping
them
centres
both
out of his budget. They're supposed to be going to dustbin collection and whatever.
Bought them both and decided to move from one of them, the retailers, the good retailers, to the other one. So they filled it up, made it very successful. And the one they moved them out of, they blew it up.
Wow.
Got rid of it. And guess what? It opened up the town to the River Tees. And they've put a green, no trading, green pocket park right the way down to the river. So it's not there yet. It's in the process. But that is going to make the whole area beautiful and great place to be. And if you go to Stockton-on-Tees, they've got buskers that they train to tell stories around the town. So they actually are like guides, but they go round and they play a pop song about the particular history of where they are. So, for example, at the Globe Theatre was where the Beatles were playing in 1963, I think it was, and they were told, just as they went on stage, that President Kennedy had been killed. So he tells the story about the Beatles and then plays a Beatles song and then moves on to the next place, etc. So there's all this stuff's going on. He's got a university in the town. They've got foreign students. It's just a wonderful example of what you can do even in a time of austerity. So I spent the last 10 years really enthusiastic about how, as a retailer that has created this problem, my whole life, from when I started work as a 15-year-old in supermarkets to when I retired in 2012, I have been instrumental in destroying town centres. As I already told you, I was the new store development director at Tesco. I was a fresh food specialist. I told you about my meat background. And in the 70s, before I became a director, you used to have all these little lorries running around towns with Wall's sausages on the side and Bowyer's sausages and Edenvale yogurt. You won't have even heard of any of these names. Bread vans. You could get dinky toys of them. Yeah, they're all running around, delivering every day to all these shops and supermarkets. I was a cohort of buyers in the supermarket. Overnight, we made all of those vans and van salesmen redundant by centralising distribution, supplying our stores with temperature-controlled product just in time, and then opening up for production of own labels instead of branded products. So, for example, ski yogurt. You won't have even probably heard of ski yogurt.
The Icelandic one? No.
No.
The old one, SKI.
SKI
Yeah.
was one of the top 10 biggest brands in the 70s. Major spender on TV. Doesn't exist today. All right, because the own label yogurts that we could then produce, because we got our own distribution, we just took the brands off the shelves and put on our own label. So, you know, we were destroying ways of life for advancement. And if you think...
Yeah, was it progress or was it, do you feel bad about it?
No, I don't feel bad about it because it's cut and thrust. Do you want to get ahead of the guy next to you? That's what business is about. It's called competition. And I'm a great believer in capitalism, except I'm a stakeholder capitalist rather than a shareholder capitalist. I believe that you've got to share it amongst all the people that create the value, not just the shareholders that put some funding in at the beginning, which, by the way, brings me to a statement which says, the reason we're in the mess we're in today is because we sold off all of the stuff we should have run better in the 80s, like water, which is a big bugbear of mine. It's the one thing that sustains life.
In terms of what, Thames Water? What
we
did we
shouldn't have sold it off. We should have
privatised it. You mean?
It was nationalised when I was growing up. Wasn't national? You've grown up.
I'm slightly older maybe than I look, but I'm born 78. But yeah.
Well, you don't. Well, 78. Yeah, but Margaret Thatcher was 82, 83.
Yeah. I was 4 years old.
You weren't interested in buying British Telecom.
I was dead
shares.
into it. Yeah. But I remember the British Telecom adverts.
Yeah. Well, the British Telecom was the only successful privatisation. Electricity, gas, water has all been a disaster. Because the shareholder, 72 billion pounds has been taken out in dividends by water companies since they've been privatised, instead of investing in them. We've now got the dirtiest rivers in Europe, and it's a real issue. I've gone down,
No, it's good. I with the privatisation, I heard someone say, because it's like, well, what should or shouldn't you privatise? And someone made the point to me, whenever there's a single source, it should be run by government. So water, electricity, you know what I mean? You can switch providers, but at the end of the day, there's all the same power stations,
40% of our electricity in this country is run by the French government.
Wow.
EDF was taken back under nationalist control about a year ago.
I think that Labour are talking about doing some of this, though, aren't they?
Well, they did in 2019, but under the Corbynism stuff, which made them very unpopular, and we all know the outcome of that. So that doesn't work. But the point is that if you're going to be successful as a community, you need to get behind the things that work. And unfortunately, we tend to be driven for financial and monetary gain as the priority.
Short term as well.
Right, and short term. Rather than, why don't we do a vision that you've got passion about, and then if you get a return from it that's good, well, that's great. So if I was, and one of your questions, I'm sure if we ever get onto the framework here, is what would my advice be to entrepreneurs and starting out today? It would be, first of all, you must have a clear vision of what you're about to do. What does good look like in 10 years' time? Not 1 year's time, 10 years' time. What are you building? What's your roadmap to get there? Where's your checkpoints? You wouldn't, sat-nav, you wouldn't set off to Edinburgh without a roadmap. So why would you do a journey commercially without some roadmap and without some checkpoints? And those are the key things. But the overriding statement to the entrepreneur is, why are you doing it? Right? And if in the answer there's the word money, they're going to fail. All right? If they're doing it because they're creating something that they're passionate about, that they can measure, and as a consequence they get rich, that works. And too many young people along my career that I've mentored along the way, when I have these conversations, they start off, well, I want to retire at 50 and I want to be rich, Well, all right. go and ask someone else because I'm not helping you.
Yeah.
All right. Tell me about what you're good at, what your vision is and what your passion is, and then get stuck into it. Now, I was a passionate retailer. I loved it. I had an instinct for it. Instinct's very important. And I added to that instinct academic training. So although I left school very young, I had to go back in my 20s, do my business studies degrees, I went to a Harvard-run business school here in Oxford during the summer. So I got all the academic side to add to my instinct side, and as a consequence, I could compete with other people. And when you wind up at Tesco, like I did at the age of 34, and you're rubbing shoulders with Terry Leahy, who we all know now became the chief executive eventually of Tesco, you have to be on the top of your game. Yeah. And it's competitive, and that's what makes things work. But I think entrepreneurs today often start off with how are we going to make a buck?
Yeah, which is okay once you're Tesco's and you're a giant brand, then it's about making money. But in the start, you need vision, because Tesco's wouldn't necessarily have a vision now, would it? Other than we're going to be the biggest, baddest gorilla in the room.
Well, let's just test what you just said. I don't think Tesla started out to make money.
No, I think that's correct. Yeah.
Look what he's done.
Yeah,
he's now the richest guy in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. But only just to I think what you say is quite right. And I think you can apply it to lots of things. I think, we lack vision in politics. We just lack vision as a country, which is so sort of, sad to watch,
Yeah. And there's a whole host of influences in there. So if we take, for example, the change in government that's just happened, 4 days in, there's a lot of activity going on, and they look like they're rolling up their sleeves and getting on with it. And all of us, no matter what your political stripe should be, let's hope they're successful.
Yeah, I think we're all happy for a change of record. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, let's get away from the sensational and the vomit on the floor. Let's get back to hard yards and make things happen. And already you've got the press 3 or 4 days in, scaremongering.
Are they?
Yeah, and which two are? It was the Telegraph and the Mail.
Okay, the right wing. Yeah.
And they're, Boris Johnson is writing all sorts of scary stuff, and you think, why aren't we as a country saying, well, just go away?
I have this strong belief that I think the press have the ability to divide us and tend to, and I really think they need a duty of care to bring us together, that we need to, they have to, I'm regulated as a tax person not to lie on my tax returns. Do you know what I mean?
Correct.
I have an institution. If I do a dodgy tax return for Bill, he tells the institute, I lose my whole life, my career, everything I've worked for. You can lose it like that. I don't need to go to court. You just say he's a dodgy fucking... I feel the same with the press. They have this huge responsibility that they can divide us. So they've got to start bringing us together. And exactly this sort of shit talking right now,
3 days after
ridiculous.
A landslide.
I don't read those. I only read the FT. So, I try and avoid, most of that noise. But it's why it'll wind people up or make people angry. It'll start the thing. I totally agree with you. Right now, let them get on with it,
All of our press today, 3 days into a Virgin government, should be talking it up.
Yeah.
And not talking it
explaining
down.
What's going on.
Yeah. I mean, we've got to put behind us
Does that not sell newspapers? Past. They would say. I'm almost like, I don't really give a shit. It's like, you would sell. I think people are also craving the truth, and they're craving to not feel angry. There's so much anger driven around, I mean, was it always thus though? I mean, there's a concept this country just muddles through. We've been incredibly successful, but actually a lot of the stuff we've done, like accidentally taking over India, is not wasn't as thought through as people may think,
Yeah, and we won the war, but it was
America
kind of helped.
Yeah,
right?
A little bit.
Yeah, in fact, just before they came in, we were losing it.
Yeah, and as far as I understand, the Marshall Plan, the most generous bailout in history, mostly went to Britain, and that enabled us to set up the NHS. I mean, these are just like bits of our history that are kind of like, oh, we're really proud of this thing, but, we weren't exactly in a place to do it.
The point is that every step of the way in a career or a journey, a commercial journey, has to be checked and balanced, has to have measures, has to have teamwork, has to have great people, has to have values,
great leadership
and principles, and great leadership. So when I started work, one of the things that I learned very quickly, mainly from my school days, because my favourite subject at school was sport, and I was good at stuff, and I usually was the captain of the team, etc. And that, unbeknown to me then, was leadership skills being developed. Communication skills, motivation skills, plans, what do we do next? We're just gone a goal down, how are we going to fix this? This kind of stuff. When you're 14, is all education, which I didn't realise then that you would manifest itself.
I've never actually thought about it because I was so useless at sport, but I've never realised how, I wasn't naturally that good at it, and I could never work out why we needed to get the ball in the net, But those are sort of related, If I was probably a bit naturally better at it, but that's very interesting what you're saying about how much you get leadership.
What were you good at school?
I was quite dyslexic. I wasn't really good at anything. I was okay at physics and maths and stuff, Eventually I've worked out there are some things I'm good at, but they're not brilliantly seen through the eye of exams and written exams. I mean, you get what you get.
What was your relationship with your peer group? Were you?
I had a lot of friends that had a terrible time at senior school, like really bad, because I came from this happy family and I was always happy. I was like. Beautiful target.
And you got picked on.
Yeah. That was perfect. With no defense mechanisms, because I just always been with, everyone had always been nice. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that taught me a lot. It changed me a lot. I ended up very unwell. I got anorexia and stuff. It fucked me up. But then that gives you a strength, because it's like you become fearless, because you're like, you've gone to the end of the needle. And
exactly.
back,
You've seen adversity.
Yeah.
And you've responded.
Turned me into a rapper. That's why I rap underneath it. No, I mean, I only came out the other day when a friend was saying to me, why are you so productive about how, and it's like, I fucking tear came to my eye. I was like, I'm still trying to show those kids at school, fuck you. Like, when I really think about it,
The only sympathy I've got for you is that if it had happened when my generation, at least you'd have grown up with rock and roll and not rap.
This is outrageous. But just to finish, so we've got Stockton-on-Tees, we've got Ruchelaer
in northwest Flanders.
And these are success stories. And
Brilliant
the places
stories.
are buzzing.
Yeah.
And so you make a really good point in that, is you need a really capable chief executive, okay?
Yeah.
Can they pay, so can another council, do they have the budget to pay a chief executive?
They pay them very well these days.
They pay more than the Prime Minister, I'm sure.
Oh, much more. And they're big six-figure numbers, some of these
So
places.
you can get talent.
Well, they can, but they don't tend to, it's not
Look
a
in the
sexy
right
job
places.
either. Right, so if you look at the Tesco guy that recently left, I can't know, his name's just escaped me, but he's been replaced now by another chief executive. He was ex-Unilever, and Dave someone, it'll come back to me in a minute. He is an industrialist that knew how to run a brand. What you need is an industrialist that knows how to run a brand. If you're a unitary council called Cornwall, that is, trust me, that exists. A unitary council.
A unitary council means a
called
single
Cornwall,
council.
a single council
that run
for
all
the
of Cornwall.
whole of Cornwall.
Is that right?
Yeah, they have town councils, little town councils.
But they're sort of subdivisions.
All of the health, education, highways, everything is. And
I'm amazed anything functions in this country. Now you're telling me how it is, sort of thing. That,
yeah, but you've got to have good leaders. So the good things that have happened recently are metro mayors. I mean, they are
city mayors.
We need to devolve power. I
Yes.
mean, Westminster, 600 MPs, give me a break. It's broken, isn't it? But the fact is, if we can devolve power to communities, and you can have metro mayors, Andy Street did a good job in Birmingham. but he got ousted because of the Tories.
I find it difficult here, though. I wish the mayors weren't then their left or their right. I mean, the mayors here, they end up making speeches again about knocking Conservatives.
That was the point.
Man.
I was about to make that point because Andy Street, who was the ex-chief executive of John Lewis, was the mayor of Greater Birmingham, and he got ousted because of political badge, right? But he was very, very good at what he did. Now you'll notice that Keir Starmer, before he went to America, had all the Metro mayors into his office in Downing Street, say, guys, we've got to work with you. So you've got, the London Mayor Sadiq Khan, you've got the guy Andy Burnham in Manchester, and the Tory one that's up in
why are they
York.
Tory or Labour? What the frick has it got to do with politics? I'm like, run the town. Stop talking to me. I mean, respect to Sadiq. I'm not, I see your speeches and sometimes they're very good, but often it's like, there's a political, it's like, stop it, just talk about London. Care about London and drive it,
Yeah, well, I'm sure.
Are they all blue or red now?
No, they've all been, it's always been that way. I mean, let's give you a classic example.
Right.
I think the best mayor that London's ever had was Ken Livingstone.
Yeah.
Right? It was his Olympics, not Boris's. It was his bikes, not Boris's. So he had the vision and the future, but he lost that election to Boris because of Boris is Boris, and
he's got a lot of charisma.
He can come in and shuffle his hair around and say, "Oh, we're all bloody stupid," and still get voted in. And we can see what happened when he went into the country. And name me one good thing the guy's ever done.
No.
All right, but Livingstone, he did some real good stuff. And if you ask the people that live in Islington, does Islington work? They'll say it does. And then you ask them why. And I'm not trying to make a political point here.
Go for it.
But the person that makes it work is Jeremy Corbyn. He is a great local MP. He cares about people. Things work in Islington because he puts the people and the vision first. So he's actually quite a good leader locally. Let's not go back to the days of left and right.
Yeah.
Let's look at people that make a difference. And these mayors are making a difference. And I'm a great advocate of devolving power to local communities to get on with creating their town as a place to attract people to live, work, play and visit because. And if you can answer that because,
the why,
and then get a plan to deliver it, it'll work. I find,
even the examples you've given, when you think it's what are we going to do this weekend or whatever, and you get down to it and it's like, well, there's the cinema.
Yeah.
There's the pub. I've got two young kids.
Let's go bowling.
It's so, and you actually, as you say, you want to be like, I want it to be a little town centre where it all is,
Exactly.
and it's humming and there's a music on and I can just sit outside with my kids and eat an ice cream and there's a great band on. I mean, the lack of we are one of the greatest music countries in the world and the lack of live music is astounding,
But there are loads and loads of young musicians out there would love a platform.
They love it.
To do their stuff.
Yeah.
It can work. And that can be part of
the amphitheatre is interesting. And again, you need the charisma. He just passed, sadly, but Ted Edwards, a friend of the show, but he was very involved in London and Partners trying to do the sort of, let's regenerate the centre of London after COVID and everything. I mean, and he explained to me one of the big blocks, they get Sony in and Sony would say, oh, brilliant. I'll tell you what, we'll turn this into a whole insane experience. We'll do this. We'll spend 500 million. It'll be incredible. And the landlords were just, they couldn't even get hold of them half the time. When they did, were like, it's owned by, some trust or something. I mean, they're so old, some of these things.
Yeah, but that's where if you get the right chief executive.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
You just compulsory purchase empty units that are deliberately being kept empty by some portfolio manager.
Yeah, I don't understand
care.
that properly because someone did say to me you can get into compulsory purchase, but the law's a nightmare, I think.
Not really. It can work.
So you can basically go, these people are blocking this development.
Although these people have
you're talking about Oxford Street
let me give you an example. When, and this is an example of people who I think are rogues in business.
Yeah.
Right? But when Philip Green left
there's a
these
character.
shores.
Yeah,
He's now still a sir, but I mean, let's not go down that street. But the fact is, when he blew up, be it British Home Stores, which he did, he destroyed it. They were empty, those stores, for years. I remember walking around York with the council.
Yeah,
4 years.
There was one in Slough.
4 years after he'd blown it up. Why is it still empty, guys? Well, what do you mean? Why is it still? What are you doing about it? What do you mean? What are we doing about it? I said, it's in your town. This is blocking your ability to have a right brand. Who owns it? Find out. Tell them to put something in it, or you'll buy it for £1 and tell them to get lost. You can do that sort of thing.
You've got to be determined.
You've got to be single-minded and aggressive about it.
There's a lot of complacency, isn't there? It's sort of common in business that people do, I don't know. It's like, who says you can't? There's also so much assumption always in life, I mean, in my world, in tax, whatever HMRC writes on their website, everyone thinks now is the law. And they go, well, you can't do it. They said you can't do it. It's like, where does nowhere does it say that in the law. It's like, they put something on. It's like, what the hell is going on with the world? Do you know what I mean? It's like, you're right. It's the sort of determination to say, we're going to just drive through these problems, you know?
Yeah.
Do you think?
But that's what the new government needs to do, is to take some of this red tape away. If they're going to build the houses on the right land,
Sort the planning out.
Sort the planning laws out.
It's now taking 2 years, I understand, what used to take 6 months.
Correct.
And you can make the simple point that it's not just tax. If you can make the country more efficient, if you can get planning in a month, what does that do to a country? Or get an answer.
Yeah.
We're thinking, tax everyone. It's like, well, maybe there's a few roadblocks. Do you know what I mean? A few things that aren't taxed, but would growth. I mean, they're saying all the right things, the government. I'm not sure about this immediate employment rights for all employees, so you can't actually have any real period in which you can tell someone that this isn't going to work. That worries the shit out of me. But the rest of what they're saying, I think great. I mean, do you feel, positive that, Keir Starmer's got what it takes? Because he's the one who's got to lead the shit out of this,
Right. The reason I feel more confident about Keir Starmer today is that 5 years ago, he picked up a party that was on its knees. Post Corbyn, it was complete mess. Had been rejected by the electorate. Boris had managed to bury Corbynism. He frightened everybody to death about Corbynism. And he picked up a fractured party. And don't forget, Boris Johnson won a majority, which was huge, 80 seats.
It's crazy.
And the swing needed to overturn him was huge. Now, Keir Starmer drove out anti-Semitism in the Labour Party absolutely ruthlessly, to the extent where he took Corbyn out of the party. And he's been single-minded in driving through values and principles that says we're going to be electable because we're going to have values, principles, and we're going to behave in a professional manner, and we're going to serve the community and get things right. That is simple.
I can imagine wanting to work in his team too, because I can imagine it being organised. I hear he works like a dog. You can imagine you'd get quality people in the team who've been building up, I feel, because the Conservatives have become even more mad. I mean, I'm old enough to look at the Conservative Party and go, what happened to John Major's Conservative Party? Do you know what I mean? And it was all kind of like small government, and let's be kind, and it was quite gentle, the Conservatives. I mean, in the moment they put in the newspaper.
I'm biased, but I'll answer your question. What happened to the Conservative Party was the generation coming out of Eton, which was namely Boris Johnson, which was David Cameron, Michael Gove. These are all the same class at Eton that all went to Oxford, Rees-Mogg, all of those people. That's where the Burlington, whatever it was, where they were trash restaurants in Oxford, where they had that private party where they would do very, very vulgar things to a pig's head. You may have heard about all of this. These people were privileged people who thought it was just a game. And thank God they've all gone, because we need to get back to what you just said. John Major, great guy, straight up and down, and there was no side to him. It wasn't a laugh. It wasn't, let's be extraordinary like Boris and all that kind of stuff. Let's get down to hard graft and do things
back to
properly.
basics. That was his slogan, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. The only thing I'd take issue with as someone who comes from privilege and has found it quite complicated in my life is that I get that when you say play it as a game, like those individuals, certainly Boris is a lying arsehole, they're characters or whatever. But I'm not sure I would necessarily say, look, privilege means that you're an idiot because of the way you behave. In fact, I would slightly argue.
No, you're not an idiot because you're privileged. You're an idiot because of the way you behave, whether you're privileged or not.
Yeah, I'd slightly pull the word out of it.
I don't think I'm that privileged, but I can be an idiot. As well. By my behaviour.
Well, it's weird being a privileged white male who went to boarding school but had, it's something I've had to conceal in my life because people judge me heavily for it. And there's actually quite a negative bias towards me.
Sounds
people
like you've
find
got
out.
a bit of chip on your shoulder about it.
Well,
maybe.
I think chip is an interesting word, but I have to conceal it at times. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it affects, if someone finds out, they will say, you don't know anything about real life. I'm not listening to you anymore. And actually, weirdly, when you analyze boarding schools, these were institutions to create people to run the empire, and they were designed to take you away from your kids. They were messed up places.
Yeah.
Eton particularly, you've got to understand each one is its own little world, and Eton particularly is designed to create leaders. It has a whole set of systems to just make someone super independent and like try and be a leader, whatever they are, break you down like the army and build you up. So
but
that's why it spits
time
them
has
out.
moved on, hasn't it?
Sure.
So if you look at the Labour Party today and Keir Starmer's leadership, you can already see, although I'll probably get shot down in flames for this, that one of the leaders that is emerging, and it's not a female necessarily, is Wes Streeting. Now that lad is out of the East End of London, he's working class, and he is saying the right things, and he's prime ministerial in his presentations.
And this is, I haven't picked up on yet. He's within the Labour team, but he's killing
he's
it.
running. He's the health secretary.
Yeah.
He's already met with the junior doctors, not to say, oh, here's your 35%, but to say, look, I get what you want because you want to be restored to what you were in 2010, but you can't have it today. But let's have a journey. Let's say we'll do it by then, and how do we get there, and how do we work together? Now, all that is very simple, isn't it?
It's very logical.
Yeah.
And it would be nice, I sometimes wonder whether we need to be amazingly more forgiving to politicians because they can't seem to say anything without us just saying, well, it's wrong. You're wrong. It's like some of these things aren't going to work out. Do you know what I mean? They're going to say, look, we're going to try and do this. I always joke like an IT system. We're going to go build this IT system. How many people have tried to build an IT system and it's gone wrong?
Oh, I've got the scars on my back.
Exactly. So it'd be nice when it's gone wrong that the politicians say, look, fucked up. Gave it to John. We thought he'd do a good job. He mussed it up. It's really complicated. You have a crack, but we don't allow them any room for maneuver and being honest. So therefore they toe this line of sort of, so I think there's another subtlety in what's going on. I think there's this sort of, they have to toe this line that they have to start never saying anything. Do you know what I mean? Then they've got to give immediate results for everything, but never say anything. So you then tie yourself up and then in the soundbite and the whole, and it just all disintegrates. We're sitting here doing a podcast because I think literally podcasts are like one of the only places left you can talk. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And say what you want to say. Do you know what I mean? The privileged working class thing, this class tension is still sits there, but it's a bit like if you say you're blue, I don't know what you do now, but you hate poor people, you hate rich people. I don't know. And if you're red, red is now almost the university like voters and stuff as well. But the point is, if you enter the debate with a sort of negativity towards one section or the other, we live in a country which has private and non-private education. It is incredibly complicated to unravel that. And it just means, for me, as someone who went through the privilege walk, I find it interesting that it makes the culture of the UK very rich. It basically means there's loads of people who come from, and it's not, you could break it down into like, well, there's this one over here. And actually there's thousands of versions of education, in terms of different colleges or how you went through it or the bits you did. And I think
my education started when I left school.
Right.
Okay.
So you went into work.
I was 15.
Yeah.
You could leave when you were 15.
Yeah.
And apart from my sport, I didn't want to be around it anymore. And by the way, I went to a private school. Okay.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was good at basketball and I needed to go there. And
That was your sport, one of your sports, was it basketball?
Huge basketball player. But that's all in history now. But the fact is that education isn't just, it's a foundation.
Yeah.
It's not the building. And you build after that. And if you're going to go through a career like I did for 45 years, in a subject that you just adored, and customer service, we've not even mentioned that yet, but I mean, that's one of the things that has deteriorated hugely.
Oh my God. I know you go to America and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah, but technology has not moved customer service on, in my view, but that's just another story. But, you learn through 45 years is where you build your building. So when you retire at 60, you've got hopefully a skyscraper there. And the foundation bit of it was your schooling. Oh yeah, it is very important. Oh yeah, it's formative. And it actually, you learn things there, like I described about leadership in my sporting activities. I didn't learn anything academically good there, but I'd certainly learned about leadership and there. And I built on that, and I built the academia later. And everywhere I went, thereafter, I applied all those learnings and built a building. And you stand back.
That's the way of putting it.
And you stand back when you're retired and say, "Am I proud of that?" Yeah. Were there things that went wrong? Yeah, of course there were. But there were mostly went right because it got built.
Yeah, actually, and when you talk to tie it together, I mean, ultimately the disparity and these angers and these feelings, they get worse when the things are badly run, aren't they? Ultimately, badly funded, badly run, because the top can survive, because if you've got enough money, you can chuck money at it, and it can, these schools can sort of, carry on, or have enough teachers and everything. It's everything that suffers below, isn't it? And that's what sort of happened.
It is, but when you get into work, the most important thing that's going to happen to you during your working life is your mentors, people that you actually learn from. I call them teachers, actually. But I mean, one of the people that had the biggest impact on my life was Sir Ian McLaurin. He was the chairman of Tesco until 96 when he retired. He's probably nearly 90 now, Ian McLaurin. A phenomenal retailer, a great leader. And I was only there 2 years. I learned more in those 2 years from that man than I learned before that in my whole life.
Did he particularly help you out, or he was just helping everyone out with his sort of wisdom?
No, he had other senior executive directors, junior directors, which I was one, that he was helping out. But when I saw what good looks like, I used to study it like mad. Yeah. Because I think, crikey, I'm going to one day be doing jobs like that, and I need to know what good looks like. And if you see someone that's good, you can learn. Equally, you can learn from people who are not good, from how not to do it. And I've had plenty of those.
Learn from others' mistakes.
And I've had plenty of those along the way.
Do you think these executives are paid too much? The whole disparity, and, is the good talent at the top these days, regardless, or not, in this country?
I don't think they're paid too much. I think some of these packages are on the extreme now, but I think the biggest thing that's driven all of this is a maggot in commercial life, which in my view needs digging out and throwing out, and that is a thing called private equity.
Really?
Okay. And I think, so for example, the food industry in this country, in terms of retailing, is run by 5 main players, okay? 80% roughly of all that food is distributed through 4 people. Asda and Morrison's are both private equity models.
Wow.
And they're both in the shit.
Right.
Too much debt, selling off assets. I mean, Ken Morrison, if he was alive today, would...
It's the vision gone again, though, isn't it?
Would kill people for this. I'm really convinced he would. Right? He was a staunch Yorkshireman who owned everything, and he had debt, in Morrison's when he died. But I mean, he was a Yorkshireman, and he had a vertically integrated business, had his own farms producing stuff, sold through. Today,
that was the Morrison model.
Today, it's a carcass of what it was. Because of the private equity model, which is aimed at filling it with debt, taking out assets, getting a prop co over there, sell off this petrol stations to another one, we fill it with debt and a little bit of sweet equity at the top, and make it make money, operationally gear it, show some profits, and then flip it. That's private equity. Where is the vision, the passion in all of that? It's all about money and a few individuals. And your framework, which we haven't got to yet, but it says, what's the biggest fuck up you've ever done?
Let's do it.
I went into private equity. I went to the model. Why did I go? I went because of greed. All right. I saw what other people were making. So I thought, well, I'm going to have some of this. And I got involved with a private equity company in America. And Cerberus was the name of the organisation. And we bought Focus Do It All out of administration, just before it was going into administration. And I had a passion and a vision, and I was going to put £1 million of my own money in there.
Wow.
Right? So we went through this whole thing. But what I realised during that journey, they were not really that interested in what I was trying to do, which was produce a quality business for the future. What they wanted to do was flip it as quickly as they could. So the sweet equity took out the money and they buggered off.
Sweet meaning the C-suite.
Yeah, because you put a top co up here where all the
executives are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm most proud of in my career, when I sold Wickes, because we rescued it from a disaster in '96. The shares were suspended, there was a fraud, the whole board was fired, and I parachuted in as the CEO.
Literally through the windows.
It's kind of, yeah. Yeah, you could say, wasn't quite Mission Impossible, but that's because I'm not as fit as him, but I ride a motorbike as good as him. But anyway, the fact is that 5 years later, when we sold it, I made a lot of money. But so did everybody else that worked there for that 5 years. Checkout operators that have been with us through that journey got a equivalent of a year's salary.
Wow.
Life-changing for them.
Were they shareholders?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they kept moaning all the way along the line. We want the bonus in money. We don't want these long-term incentive plans. We don't want these shares. Right. I kept saying to them, this is the way you build. You build. And then we sold the business 5 years later, and then suddenly,
I can buy my, yeah. Well, I'm glad you had a happy ending. The argument for private equity traditionally is that businesses get to a stage where they need the big checkbook. They've proved the business model, it's working bananas, bring in private equity with a big checkbook, And I've also heard an argument that British companies have this problem sometimes that they have collective decision making. So sort of they're not, the marketing guys making finance decision, the finance guys making CEO. We sort of get all a bit with the room with the tea and get a bit lost. And things go to shit. Private equity come in and sort of go, right, you're in charge, shut up. But you had an American experience, which was particularly carnivorous, perhaps. Do you think there's good private equity, or your view it's just sort of, it's all...
In my sector, I can't think of any good private equity.
Really?
And it's not just private equity in the sense of these private equity providers. It's also the entrepreneurial model. So if you look at people like Matalan, you remember him?
Yeah.
And
is he gone?
He starts with nothing, builds a huge business. It's private, and they think, do you know what? I think I'll take this public. So they take it public, and then they think they can behave just the same way as they used to when they were entrepreneurs. They don't understand the term corporate governance. They don't get it. That's private equity operating in a public sector. And guess what? It fails. Richard Branson failed doing it with Virgin Airways. He took it private again. Once it starts to not produce what they want in the city, crikey, let's get it back out again. And lo and behold, they usually buy it back for a lot less than they sold it for.
Yeah. Do you think the city
it's quite smart. I think the city is a lot to blame for this.
Yeah, they don't like vision either.
No.
They're just looking for like, oh, it's gone down a bit, sell.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. And, when I had to sell Wickes, it was because we had a cash bid against us, and we successfully defended it. We were the first company for 15 years to defend a cash bid, but we lost 27% of our stock to the hostile bidder. And 20% of that was sold by one shareholder. And only met me for 10 minutes. And I said to my FD when we came out, where the hell did he come from? We've been coming to this company, it's called Schroders, by the way, and we never met this guy. We go and meet him for 10 minutes and he sells the whole 20% at a price higher than they'd bid. They bid 370, he sold it at 430. So guess what? 430 becomes the price, but it can't go up after that. That's how it all works. And I went to... I remember going out to see a big shareholder, 10% shareholder, name of Neil Woodford, which you probably know of Neil, out at Henley. And I'm doing a presentation. He said, Bill, stop the presentation. I'm not selling to those arseholes. You boys have done a fantastic job. I'm never selling. So I said, would you do a press release? He said, I'm going on holiday tomorrow. I'll write it now. And everybody fell in behind that.
Wow.
And we won. And they didn't succeed. But because they got 27%, guess what? You can do nothing.
Yeah, they can block everything because they've got more than 25%.
So we went back 6 months later and said, well, you can have it, but it's 490 now. So they bought it at 490. It was still worth more than that at that time. But I'm not going to be...
So you're a public company, they come in as a hostile bidder trying to get control.
Yeah.
Then they pick on different shareholders. They find them out from the share register and they
but the takeover rules, there are rules to how this works. I mean, it's quite an experience to have to do.
I bet you have to really get on it.
Yeah. You do. For the boy that started work at 15 as the butcher guy says, what's your name then, sonny? There I am, 15. Oh, blimey, Willie's not going to work. I better call myself Bill.
What would have Bill been if he was called Willie? You're making me think of the Simpsons episode when he becomes Max Power and his life changes.
There are people out there that say he is a Willie. So, that's what happens in your life, isn't it?
Well, let's see. I mean, amazing stories, mate. I mean, what do you think at the moment then is the biggest problem facing the retail industry? I mean, it's the same problem, is it? Or has it changed?
Well, no, I mentioned the private equity thing. I think in food retailing, when you've got something like, Morrison's about 15%, Asda's about 17%. So you've got something like 30% of the food distribution in this country is being handled by companies that are laden with debt. That's got to be a concern. So I think that's a macro concern. The micro concern, or the detailed concern I've got, is how is technology being translated in the retail sector? And I'm not just talking about home delivery and Amazon. I'm talking about how is technology being used to make the customer experience better? And you've got to answer that question with, it's no. I mean, for example, you go into a big supermarket, you've got all these self-service checkouts. So suddenly you're working for the supermarket.
I know,
right?
I find that mind-blowing, that bit.
Well, I've been exasperated by it because, at least give us a discount for doing that bit of the work.
Yeah.
Because you're saving on the labour. But no, none of that happens.
Yeah, that would be interesting if they said 1% off if you use the self-service.
Yeah.
You'd be like, all right.
Yeah, well, it's just an idea for it, just throw that out there.
Yeah.
But eventually, I don't think there'll be any checkouts at all.
No,
I mean,
you'll walk in, put it in, and you'll walk out again.
Always
get charged on your phone or whatever.
It exists already in your phone. You go in, your phone will bleep. It knows you're in there. You'll fill up your trolley. You'll have your bags inside. It'll get the total. It'll charge your phone when you go out. End of. Now, guess what? There's going to be a mass redundancy of checkout operators from the 4 operators if they ever get that act together. So who's thinking about that? These are the things that, the challenges that face the executives today. But you hit the nail on the head. In the public arena, public companies arena, what matters is your quarterly statement and their share price. They're not interested in 5 years' time.
No.
And that applies to the electricity people. That applies to the gas the providers. And they're not the investors are not interested in you.
I always find it strange too, because it's a secondary market. In the back of my mind, like the thing that's driving all this behavior, you listed and there was some income that came in, but all this money flying around, it's not going to the company. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. I always find that really like, I don't know, it's sort of a side point, but it's like, hang on, this company's been driven into the dust by the secondary market's opinion of their accounts, which they don't understand. I remember at my first job, I briefly worked at a hedge fund. I remember sending to not JD, was it JD Sports? There was another one, JCB Sports. Anyway, and I remember the CEO there, that one of the analysts started picking him about. And, I think he was a Yorkshireman or something. And he was like, he just tore the guy apart. He was like, if you think you're 20 and you have any idea what you're talking about, shut up and sit down, And it was perfect, because you need that kind of like.
You do.
But of these three options in life, when you're building a company, do you go public? Do you do private equity? The greed will get you eventually. But your view would be stay private, be private, run, and have a vision and crack on with it. And the bugger the greed,
Absolutely.
But then your people that all had the share options, they would have never had their exit though.
I know. Sorry. If you look at, do you know Julian Richer?
Rings a bell.
Richer Sounds.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. I worked on a film he produced.
Julian was great. A great entrepreneur, and he go and ask people who work for Julian Richer. He has wonderful ways of rewarding people. He has a house in Yorkshire somewhere where they go on holiday, and they have competitions, and everybody is involved in the success of the company. He's a philanthropic guy as well. I mean, back in the day, the Quakers, the Cadburys, and all of those kind of people, they would invest in the community. Bourneville, the town, was built by the Cadburys.
Amazing story, yeah.
Where can we see some more visibility of the billionaires in this country? I mean, Dyson's just fucked off to bloody Singapore.
He fucked off ages ago. I read the news today that he's getting rid of a load of employees.
1,000 people here. Thanks very much. Made a fortune out of us. Piss off. Now, I'm sorry to get into the vernacular about this, but it really riles me when I read in the Telegraph, we're going to be, all the rich people are going to leave because of the tax that the Labour Party will bring onto capital gains tax and all that kind of stuff. Well, actually, if that's what they want, then tell them to get lost. They're not part of this country. By the way, when you get lost, whatever interest you got here, we're going to take away from you.
I think the only bit to caveat with that as a tax person is not the Brits, but non-doms are foreigners. So there is an aspect of which, we've had this rule for 200 years since Napoleon's time. No one ever came here for the weather or the food, So we said, blimey, well, I'll tell you what, come to Britain. We won't tax you on anything overseas. They've got to pay tax elsewhere. So the Rishi Sunak wife thing, all of that, as a tax person, there's not a person in the country as a tax advisor who wouldn't be negligent to advise a foreign person about how the rules went. Want to change the rules? That's fine. But there is a truth to a foreigner who's not really British and not really here for any other reason than they're hanging out for a bit or their kids going to school for 5 years. They might turn into British, and then trust me, the tax will get its claws into them.
I hear what you say, but there are people in this country. So, for example, Philip Green, we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
He's an example. His wife owned the business, and she lived in Monaco.
Yeah.
He
that's what happens to a lot of the people. They end up leaving because they sit with a tax advisor and they say, to be fair, they usually say, I haven't seen it many times, I don't really want to pay all this tax. And you say, we have to leave the country then and live somewhere else.
But why don't you, listen, one of the things, I remember when the Labour Party put the tax up from 40% to 50% in the noughties.
Yeah.
And I was chief executive at the time, I think, of the big food group, the Iceland Group. And I got a call from the FT saying, are you going to leave?
Oh, I know. Over 50% is fine.
And I said, are you kidding me? I said, whatever the government of the day is, I'm part of this team. And whatever the tax, if I'm paying tax because I'm earning a lot of money, so be it. I'm earning a lot of money.
Is there a limit? I mean, tax until the 80s was at rates between 92 and 102% from the Second World War. And I thought my granddad was a lazy bastard who started this business because he never built the business. But then I found out, no, that generation, anything over a couple $100,000, you didn't get anything. So why would you get out of bed?
In the 60s, it was 19 and 11 in a pound.
Yeah, there we go.
And my father fell into that bracket.
So there's probably a limit. You do get a brain drain.
I think that.
But 50%.
I think if you were paying 99p in your pound you're earning, you'd probably want to leave, wouldn't you? If you could find a way.
I think you add other elements, like we're talking about how society's a mess, and you're a teacher or you're a doctor, and then you're like, oh well, even the career doesn't look great, does it? You know, I think those elements start to sort of come together and think, well, you know, a better bugger off. I think you could probably say if you own over $500,000, you could pay 60% tax. I think you could probably edge it up higher and higher.
I get that debate, but what about this one then? So the guy that owns the Range, Chris Dawson, he held.
The Range is restaurants?
The Range is an assortment store, but huge.
Okay.
Oh, it's huge. Right? He models himself on Philip Green. So his wife lives in the Channel Islands. And she owns the company. And she owns the company.
It's very it's very frowned upon.
Yeah, hang on. When the pandemic hit, the previous government stopped business rates for the retailers, right? Gave them a holiday. And I was in Westminster at one of those horseshoe events, you know, and I said, guys, what the hell are you doing? The supermarkets that are open, they do not need a rates holiday.
They're having a field day.
And you should take it back. Well, I'm not saying because of me. There were other people that are saying it. Tesco was the first to give it back.
Oh, it's a sort of we're making enough money.
And they gradually fell over. But the ones that didn't give it back were the private companies, like the Range, like my old company, Iceland, both of which got something like 40 plus million pounds in rates relief. And for Chris Dawson, that went straight through to the bottom line, out of the country to his wife.
Yeah, that's crappy.
For Iceland, the CEO, who was Malcolm Walker's son, he said, oh, well, we've used the money to buy out our South African investor. Really? What's that got to do with it?
Yeah.
You know, so that's what's wrong, you know, when you give money away. But, you know, I've now got onto my hobby horse. What's happened to the woman with the yacht and her 27 million?
Which one was the one with the yacht and the 27 million?
Oh, I can't remember her name, but the Scottish lady that was made her money out of bras, and she's now in the House of Lords, and she got 27 million from the PPP.
Yeah, that one.
What's happened to that? It kicks under the carpet. Sir Philip Green, the Houses of Parliament pass. He should lose his knighthood. What's happened to the Honours Committee? Never done it, get it away from him. We just brush things aside.
You explained something which helps me actually, because I find some of this subject very interesting. It's probably because I sit in the perspective of tax, but I think it's the sort of immoral behaviour which is poor. Like I don't really like it. None of us do in this building, and I'm sure we're not alone as professionals. When we have a client who's like, "Yeah, but I don't want to pay tax," it's like, well, yeah, don't we all? I mean, where are we going with this conversation? You know, what can I do? And that's what you end up saying to someone, sort of fuck off. But like, look, if you want to move abroad and go live in Alcatraz for the rich in Monaco, that's your business. And you know, you can get out of our system.
Well, good for you. I'm chairman of a small family business. It's quite successful. And they're obsessed with paying tax. And I said, good. I said, no, obsessed with trying to avoid paying tax. Okay. And I said, guys, if you spend as much energy as you do on that subject, building the business, and pay as much tax as you can, you'll be hugely successful. It is not your job to try and stop paying tax.
No, it's like the guy at school. I remember when I was young, we'd always spend all night trying to work out why he didn't do his homework, and I was just like, just do your homework. I mean, I have a theory
or at least copy mine.
Yeah, exactly.
For a tenner.
You're so stressed out about it, mate.
You missed an opportunity. At least copy mine for a tenner.
Yeah, that would have been the answer. Get AI to write it. Actually, you hit on something which I think may be a solution, because it's an international problem tax. So people can leave. They can go live in Monaco. They can can come back here for 90 days a year, and they can do all of that. And if they don't come back for 5 years or longer, they can get out of various tax situations. But I would like to do the thing that you then go, well, okay, if you decide to live in one of these offshore places, then you can't come to Europe or America. You can't come. You haven't got the stamp in your passport. The visa's rejected. You're not paying sufficient tax. We require you somewhere in the world to be paying, I don't know, at least 30% tax or something. Pick a low number like America and say you're earning quadrillions. You got 10 million of income a day or a year, whatever it is. Fine, good for you. But if you're not paying tax anywhere, I'm sorry, you're not welcome here. And actually, if you look at how the double tax treaties work a lot of the tax treaties, and Britain has more tax treaties than anyone else in the world. We've got 180 or something. A lot of them are basically that. We'll look after your people. You look after our people. We accept that there's some stuff so you can go somewhere for 6 months and work there, and we're not going to have to tax you there. But there's a lot of this sort of quid pro quo. You've got a social system of healthcare. So do we. If your guy gets sick or girl, then we'll look after them. You look after our people. So a lot of it's sort of, in a way, the framework's kind of there, but there's no brutality to it, then you would say, well, what about the Caribbean, the offshore places that survive on this? What happens to these little islands? And it's like, okay, good question. I don't, maybe they've got to go back to, tourism or something. They've got to think of other things. But there is that aspect. What happens to Monaco? It's a country. Who
cares?
Yeah, I kind of with you.
Who cares?
Monaco cares, I guess.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they'll be
tell them to do something about it.
Yeah, true.
I mean, when the oil runs out and we don't use oil anymore, the Arab states have got a problem. But guess what? They're building something now, which is a product nothing to do with oil. I mean, they're building it on the back of oil money, but if you look at some of the tourist attractions that they're building, that they're going to have an economy for the future. They're thinking beyond the oil monies.
What do you think is bullshit in retail? Maybe you've already said it. I don't know, but is there anything you feel is bullshit?
I think the biggest bullshit that's going on in retail and any service-based industries is that the customer service is poor today.
Appalling.
It's gone backwards. I was the first customer service director at Tesco. When I first joined in 1986, I joined as a senior director, and they called me a number 12. They just bought me from where I was working before, and a week before I started, they rang up and said, guess what, you're going to be our customer service director. I said, shit, what does that mean? And I spent a whole year trying to understand what made a business good at customer service, and what it boiled down to was the guys at the top, their values, their principles, the way they behaved affected our ability to get good customer service. So if you
interesting.
So if you went into a store and you walked around with your hands behind your back as the boss, and then you saw a supervisor behind the checkout and you beckoned her towards you and you said, what are the two most useless things in a supermarket? She looks at you and it's her first day kind of thing. And he said, well, the first is a trolley that's not being used this side of the checkouts. He was in the store. And he said, you know what the second one is? A supervisor standing the other side doing nothing about it. And this poor girl breaks down. Okay.
But he wasn't blaming her necessarily, but yeah.
Oh, he was.
She's the supervisor.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Oh,
sorry.
Right. She's the supervisor.
Sorry.
I said, Dennis. I mean, he's a great guy, Dennis Tuffin. He's dead now, but he was brilliant. I said, Dennis, does that make you feel good? What you just did? I mean, that girl's going to leave us now. So, that's what I've been trying to say to you guys. You've got to change. Now, Ian McLaurin, to be fair to him, did all that, and he changed. It changed the way the internal customer service worked, how the values and principles, training, communication, things that we think are important, innovation. And we are going to behave that way. We're not going to eat babies for breakfast, which is what we've got a reputation for. We're not going to be leather jacket kids, which is what we've got a reputation for. We are going to be caring managers. We're going to grow you as an individual, and then we'll expect you to treat our customers properly. But you don't tell them off and then expect them to.
Kindness almost.
Yeah. I mean, I went to Disney World before I sold this to the board at Tesco, and I got inducted. I'm a customer service director at Tesco. Please teach me how to do customer service. I haven't got a bloody clue. I was a butcher. Anyway, I came back with all of this culture.
From Disneyland.
How do we do things?
They're amazing
here?
at it in America.
Yeah.
And every time I get off in New York, I'm like, oh my God, you know, what can we get you, sir?
Well, we did that at Tesco. We changed it in 1986 with the Tesco Customer First program. We did all that visibly and we changed it all. And it was hugely, hugely impactful in changing the culture at Tesco. That's probably one of the, forget rescuing Wickes and Iceland and all that. I'm probably most proud about changing a huge machine, its culture in 1986. If you ask me what success is, I don't know what that would be what it was.
In your example of retail, there's going to be less and less people there. So customer service is going to become AI, I assume, answering my questions about a product or,
It could be, but it's got to be easy to use. And you're going to have a transition. So you've got dinosaurs like me who will not deal with a bot.
No.
All right. I will not.
You would refuse.
My bank has a thing.
They're crap bots, though. If they were good bots.
My bank keeps on at me to go online. I won't do it. Right. I'm an old dinosaur. And they have a thing. I can give away the name of my bank now, but it Coots 24. And I can ring up 24/7. Do this, do that, do this, do that. Fantastic. And I said to my banker, you ever get rid of that, I'm going to change.
Yeah.
Now, whether they do or they don't one day, but I can't use a bot. It's never the question I want answered. You go on a telephone today and guess what?
Your call is important to us.
Oh, yes. And by the way, you can go online at about 4 minutes later, you said, fuck me, I just want to talk to somebody.
Yeah. I crashed my car 2 weeks ago shouting at my NatWest automated because I couldn't get it to understand and then I crashed my car.
Yeah, it really winds me up. This is not customer service, this is crap.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is.
Well, I can never quite work out. My old man tells me, well, you go down the high street, you walk in the place and you talk to the person. There was a British Telecom, there was a British Gas, you go in, and he said you'd stand in a queue for a couple of minutes, boom, have a chat, and is it like there's so many more of us? Is it that they just worked out, we can get rid of all of this stuff? Is it the thing that they can get rid of all the problems because you give up? Because the moment you have a problem now, if it's less than 20 quid or something, you're just like, it's not worth my time, trying to sort this out. This is going to take a week and I'm going to lose my crap.
But if you take this to its conclusion, which is going to be less and less jobs, right?
Yeah.
Is anybody thinking about what we're going to do? How society is going to operate when there's nothing to do? And how are you going to fund all these people that have got nothing to do?
I think I like the answer a clever guy I saw say that you mustn't think there's a limit to human creativity. So I think it's a back to the vision thing. I think it nicely ties up the conversation because, in theory, there's nothing for them to do, but we can come up with loads of stuff because people like people and, we could get bots to write music, but we need musicians to play music or whatever. There's thousands of jobs out there if we really think about it. We need more carers, we need more whatever.
You hit the nail on the head. If we really think about it.
Yeah.
And we really got to think about it. And we've got to plan longer term. Is it not
the brutality of capitalism that slightly says these people will lose their jobs and then we need the innovators and the entrepreneurs to be offering the jobs? It's not necessarily as well thought out as that, is it? It's more chaotic.
And it doesn't work out that way either, does it?
No.
The real sector that shows it up is the care sector today.
Yeah.
Would you do that job for £15 an hour?
Well, I can use music again because people are all like, well, I'm not getting paid enough. And I just always joke, I'm sorry, if you want to be a rock star, that's a penny an hour. You want to go work in a care home or in a sewer, I'll give you £200 an hour.
Yeah.
If we started to pay like that, it would make a lot more sense. Everyone's like, I'm getting screwed. Everyone wants to be a musician, man. It's an amazing job. It's an amazing job all the time. It's like working a care center. Right, we're going to do the end of the show now, which is a few questions.
Okay.
Quick fire questions, Bill. You've been absolutely brilliant.
Go for it.
Or Willie. Doesn't suit you. You made a good decision. DQ to music, nice and easy. What was your first job? The Butchers, was it?
Well, my very first job was a paper round.
Very good.
I was 13.
very good. What was your worst job?
My worst job, I think, was working with private equity. I really didn't enjoy it.
I really like that bit of what you said. Favourite subject at school?
Sport.
Oh, yeah, very sporty. What's your special skill, Bill?
I think it comes from my sporting days. I like to think I was a pretty good leader, and I learned all of that from sport. Game plan, motivation.
What was your best sport? Basketball, was it?
Yeah, probably.
You're quite tall. How tall are you?
No, I'm not tall. I wasn't tall at all. But you don't have to be tall to be the playmaker in basketball, and that it's the guys that
Sets it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a shopkeeper. I think I became a retailer when I was 4 with my mother. It's in my book, this story, but she used to take me shopping every day in those days. We'd start with the bank and then the fishmonger.
Grocers, yeah.
And I used to be fascinated. I think that's when I became a shopkeeper.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember it. My dad would take me shopping. Yeah, and you go to store and it was all laid out on
and
the sides.
Smells and the...
Yeah. Different world.
Yeah.
What did your parents want you to be?
My dad wanted me to be a civil instruction engineer like he was, and we fell out. We fell out about it. He was quite successful, but you know what? It really amazed me. He made his money out of building Tower Hamlets, basically, and he did a fantastic job. And then, before he died, they were all blown up and locked down.
Wow.
And I thought, wonder what that's like, doing your career and seeing it all dismantled. And here I am at 70, looking around, and Amazon comes along and it's dismantling what I did. And that's a fact of life. You've just got to be there at the time, enjoy it, be good at it, make it work, and then don't worry about it when you stop.
Nothing lasts forever. Go-to karaoke song? You ever do karaoke?
I know it's only rock and roll, but I like it.
Love it. Office dogs, business or bullshit?
I don't really understand this bit that you've got. Bullshit I can't stand. And I can see through it straight away, not just by the words that you're going to thrust at me in a minute, but, you can tell when somebody's bullshitting you, and I can't handle it. So it's got to be business, it's got to be objective, and you've got to back up what you're saying with facts.
Okay.
Or piss off.
Love it. Have you ever been fired, Bill?
No, I've never actually been fired. But when I told the private equity people that the guy they sent across from America to tell me how to do my job was a complete goon, they asked me to become the non-executive chairman. I said, I guess that's being fired from CEO to being non-executive chairman. I stuck with my money and I said, yeah, it's your train set. You want me to leave the party, the poker table, I want my money back. So they paid me my £1 million back. And then they busted it within a year. And I had to basically wound it up. So I guess that is being fired.
Yeah, it's just about.
You've obviously never been fired.
Oh, well, I'm nepotism, mate. I work in a family business, so,
Yeah, but that can be even worse.
Yeah, I'm trapped. Put it that way. I'm trapped. There's no way out,
Yeah, but it's a good trap.
It's a good trap. It's a gilded cage. It's the problem, or the advantage. What's your vice, Bill? Do you have a vice?
Oh, not really. Motorbikes. I just love
bloody dangerous. I mean, I bet your kids worry about it.
But the real good thing about a motorcycle is that if you don't concentrate 100% of the time, you're dead. It's as simple as that. So I love riding motorcycles. I love the freedom of the road. I'm going with an old mate from school in April next year. We're doing the Wild West on a guided bike tour
in America.
Oh,
you've got to do it in America.
16 days. I've done it before. I've done the Rockies and Denver.
Wow.
I mean, you pretend you're a Hell's Angel. I don't ride Harley Davidsons because I don't like them, but I'm a Triumph man. But I can't hire one over there, so I'll have a Yamaha. That should be fun.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, Bill, you've been brilliant. So now we're on to the best part of the show, maybe. We're just going to name some stuff. You need to take a paddle. Business is on one side, bullshit's on the other. You need to hold it up and say business or bullshit and tell me what you think. We'll do a few of these.
I'll say
and we might debate them a little bit. Okay, DQ the music and we're off. Monthly management accounts.
business.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think so. I don't think you can do bugger all without it.
Yeah.
Incubators. You ever been involved in any of those?
Well, incubator. I think it's a bit bullshitty, but innovation and incubating is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some good retail incubators out there.
Yeah.
Well, these are all very traditional. First mover advantage.
Absolute business. It's important, but I've often had people come into my boardroom say, "This is first mover advantage," and they tell me what it is. I say, "That's bullshit. Fuck off." By the way, when I used to run my businesses, I used to have the guys in and say, "Look, we've just arrived. We're taking it over. I'm a turnaround guy. I need to give you a translation sheet. This is all the top senior executives. So if I say shit, it means oh dear, all right? So let's just have it all out now, because I don't want anybody complaining about my language, because I drop into the vernacular." They used to give them this translation sheet, and it worked then. I don't think it would work today.
There's something about swearing. It does actually relax people a bit. It's a shame you couldn't keep up the butcher slang,
Well, you can, yeah.
And just crack on with it, and there'd be one other person in the room laughing.
So if I say tish now, it's okay, right?
Yeah.
You know what tish means?
That was one of the ones you said.
Tish, what's that backwards?
Tish is T-I-S-H. Shit. Sorry, I struggle with the dyslexia. Golden parachutes.
Oh shit, that's bullshit, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit on that line of sort of unpopular in the public domain, isn't it? Whether or not,
That's not really business, is it?
I don't know how many of you done of these. Client lunches.
Oh, none.
Did you not get any good client lunches, Bill, in your star-studded career?
Oh, no. Listen, when in my early career, when I was a buyer in the 70s, they did happen, all right? I was taken out by salespeople to lunch. But after that, it stopped. But by the 80s, Perrier water and a packet of crisps at lunchtime was what it was. I never did it again.
You missed it a little bit.
I did.
I said, you've just made me happy about one of the only good things about my job. So, I mean, a clear one, loving what you do.
Yeah, that's business.
Is fundamental.
It's without it, you can't do it. You can't be good at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do a couple more. What do you feel about lifestyle businesses? I understand, like, when someone has a lifestyle business, so it sort of it funds their lifestyle, basically.
Well, if you're in business to fund a lifestyle, that's bullshit for me. You're in business because you're passionate about it, and if it gives you a good lifestyle, that's a plus.
Yeah, always get the vision right. Free ports, does anyone actually use these things?
Well, I don't know. I think they're bullshit, really.
They must be.
Yeah.
Maybe someone might, I don't think anyone's used them, unfortunately. All right, we'll do one more. What do you think about digital nomads? These are people living everywhere, doing their work from anywhere. They kind of don't belong anywhere.
Well, I'm a bit of an old dinosaur. I think that's bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, again, a digital nomad would fit into you can get out of the tax system kind of stuff. You kind of go and because a lot of the digital nomad visas come with very low taxes.
But I got to be careful here because, the future might well be a global future and countries might change. If you go forward, 200 years, we're not going to be around. I'm not going to be around for another 10 years, by the way I'm going, because my biggest vice is wine, actually.
Good. I'm glad to hear.
but digital nomads, it may well be a part of life in 50 years' time. But in terms of tax and your business, I think you've got to move with those times, and you've got to have an effective system. Otherwise, society's not going to work.
Yeah. I think that's enough. Don't you think, D? Bill, you've been absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much.
I thoroughly enjoyed you guys.
Oh, no, you've been absolutely great. So that was this week's episode of Business Without Bullshit. We'll be back with a quiz, Business or Bullshit, on Thursday. Until then, it's ciao.